Hello, my name is Kai, and I am a bit of a rambler. Welcome to Ramble On 15, where I talk about what went on this week. I'm going to start out with someone getting trapped in the elevator on the 4th floor here, where I am, and nobody knew who to call or anything, so when I was leaving my building, a guy stopped me and explained that his friend was trapped in the elevator on the 4th floor. And they already called the police and everybody they could call, but no one's here. And she's pounding on the doors and screaming, is how he explained it to me. And I could hear her pounding on the doors and screaming, faintly because it's a few floors up, but that was happening. So I called my Airbnb hosts. They said that they had already sent a technician. The technician was on their way. They had already talked to that same guy. He seemed pretty frantic, so he might not have realized, it's going to take a few minutes to get someone out. Oh, it was also pretty late in the evening, so it was probably going to take a while to get the technician to get out there, and his friend is obviously freaking out on the other side of the elevator she's trapped in, so he probably felt more anxious because of that. But after the guy had asked me for help, he had gone back upstairs, and I didn't know after the Airbnb hosts told me that there was a technician on the way if they already knew that, the guy and his friend stuck in the elevator. And I kind of didn't want to go up there because it was a loud, fearful situation, and it just, don't want to be around that. But I got the answer from the hosts. I figured it would be nice for them to have reassurance that someone was on the way. So I walked up a few floors to where the guy was standing outside the elevator that his friend was trapped inside and told them that a technician was on the way. Or I told him that a technician was on the way. But after I told him, hey, the host said the technician is on his way, apparently they didn't tell him that, which is very common. These hosts address all of my concerns extremely quickly. It's great. The place I'm staying is very nice. But they don't answer. They just do whatever you talk to them about, but they don't say, like, oh, the elevator's fixed, or the hot water's back on, anything like that. There's no status updates from these hosts. So I guess they didn't tell him. So I told him that a technician was coming, and he looked relieved and said thank you, and I said bye, good luck, and went on my walk, and as I walked downstairs to the front door, I could hear him shouting that there was a technician on the way to his friend in the elevator. And then I went out on my evening walk, and by the time I got back, a couple hours or something, the elevator was working again normally. So I guess she got out, and I'm glad that that whole thing worked out. That's the only thing I've seen broken in this hotel. Like I said, it's a really nice place, and the hosts are very quick to respond by action, but they don't respond by text or voice in any kind of timely manner. They'll fix it, though. They just don't say, oh yeah, the lock's been replaced, or anything like that. Like, the hot water went out here, and I had to, figure out, it's a weird hot water thing, I think there's a water tank, and the water just gets used up. But if I turn it off and then back on, the water comes back on. And then for a while, there was just no hot water, which I mentioned in the last episode. But I told them, they said, thank you for reporting it. I didn't get any updates, but then the hot water started working again the following morning. And there's been a few things like that. And whenever I ask them, there's no visible response, but the problem is fixed, which I'm okay with. I would much rather have the problem fixed than have the host tell me that everything will be fine and then nothing happens, like happened in Shella in Guatemala. That host kept telling me she'll get a lock for the door or all of this stuff, and then she just didn't do it every day. I also like that the whole hotel is run by women, like it's an all-lady office. Seems like a tight ship. And I feel like maybe that's why they clean this place. That's like a huge reason why I like this place so much. They have a maid? They have a janitor? I don't know. A lady who comes in and cleans the whole place every day, which I really like and makes this place so much nicer than it otherwise would be. I generally keep my rooms very clean, and this has PLM, like the polylaminate wood flooring, so it looks nice and is easy to clean. So my room's nice, but usually when I stay at a place, the outside just gets dirtier every day because people are staying there, like the hallway or the bathrooms or whatever. And these ones are always clean. I think the lady takes Sundays off, but every other day she comes in and cleans the entire Airbnb floor, and I'm guessing all the other floors. But she takes out the trash in both the kitchen and both bathrooms. She cleans the toilets, and she cleans the kitchen stuff when she's in the kitchen. It's great. Every day. So it's a clean spot, which I really like. Definitely influenced me to buy a second month. I'm on my second month now in Panama, and I was like, well, just stay in this place. My room is tiny, and it is a shared bathroom, but if things are clean, I don't really have a problem with a tiny room because it's easy to clean, the bed's comfortable, there's no window so I can fall asleep so easy, which I know I've mentioned 100 times, but I really like that. I feel much more well-rested here than I have in a long time with an Airbnb. Oh, moving on, I've started using carbolic soap, which is a soap with phenol acid inside, and it was like a popular soap. It's that disinfectant smell a lot of people associate with hospitals. They used to use carbolic soap, and old people smell, probably. So I just saw it, and it was super cheap, and I'd never used it before. And I was like, carbolic soap, that's interesting. But boy, it talks about a tar-like smell, and it was these 3 bright orange pink bars of soap in shrink wrap. And I was like, I can't smell anything through the shrink wrap. And usually you can smell some of the smell of whatever soap it is, even through plastic. I feel like they do that purposefully. But this one, they must have purposefully not used the breathable plastic at all, because this stuff is pungent. It smells like tar, according to Wikipedia, when I looked up what the scent was. But it definitely smells petroleum-based, so I'm kind of wary about putting it on my skin. But it's a good soap. I mean, it feels like soap like other soap. I probably won't get it again just because of the big stank, but good, cheap soap. They used it in hospitals for decades. And after they found out that phenol acid was acid, apparently they made it safe for mass production. So that's good. Sometimes they would put too much phenol acid in the soap, apparently, when it first came out, like 70 years ago or whatever. But next time, I'm probably going to get hypoallergenic soap, because another lovely thing of being in a metropolitan area like this is that I found hypoallergenic soap while I was buying 2-for-1 beer at the House of Meat. I thought it was funny that at Casa de la Carne, that was the place I first found hypoallergenic soap. But I've been looking around, and it's actually in a bunch of places. So I like hypoallergenic stuff in general. If I use laundry detergent, it's hypoallergenic, although I prefer to use baking soda most of the time. But now I have hypoallergenic soap I can get at corner stores like right next to me. It's all around. Now I have good soaps. And I like the weird orange soap. It just smells really strong, and I feel kind of bad because it's a shared bathroom. So there's this overpowering orange and pink bar, and I had 3 of them, so I'm using them as fast as I can so that I don't leave these stinky tar soaps in there. But I'm on the last one, so they'll just have to deal with that for another week or so. I'm also finally trying to get into Star Trek again, which I have a difficult time watching. All the memes about it online and the cultural osmosis knowledge I have of Star Trek just from living and it being such a phenomenon. It sounds interesting and I would be into it, kind of like Doctor Who. But it was difficult for me to get into Doctor Who also. And I tried The Next Generation again, and the opening gambit is just so preachy, it's difficult for me to get into. But I understand also that a lot of people describe Star Trek as morality plays, episodic morality plays, and I feel like I'll like it eventually. But Lower Decks has finished. There's 5 seasons of that, and that's the animated Star Trek, but it's an official Star Trek show. So I figured I can get into that at least, because Animation also makes a lot of sense for Star Trek because of the crazy stuff that's happening all the time, and duplications and interdimensional whatevers. You can do anything in animation. It's such a wonderful medium for science fiction or fantasy. Even that was difficult to get into, though. But I liked the main character right away, Tawny Newsome, and her friend, Boimler. So I liked a couple of characters enough, and then I liked all 4 of the main characters pretty quickly. But I still only watched like an episode or 2 at a time because the Lower Decks, which also obviously is modern rather than as old as something Next Generation or the original series, I like that it's updated and it's fun to watch. It's not as preachy as the old stuff, and it looks new. Like, I believe it all because it's animation. So when they say they're ripping the ship in 2 or something, I don't have to watch them tap a chisel through a Star Trek model for the practical effects they tried to do in the original shows, which are fine for the time they were in. But I'm already having difficulty getting into the show, so when I see ridiculous prosthetics or a bad practical effect, it's not easy for me to keep my interest. But I think it eventually will be, because after I did some start and stops with Lower Deck, I finally did get into it. It's good to watch. It's not too long, 25 minutes an episode or something. The stories are not super compelling, but the characters, the main characters especially, and their development is interesting for me to watch. And I can see why they only have 5 seasons, because the characters are developing so quickly. There must be a satisfying conclusion for all of them at the end. I asked online if I could just start with Lower Decks, even though it's one of the most recent shows. And 90% of the people were like, no, you have to start at the beginning. You have to make sure you see everything. But a couple people said, yeah, it's fine. You'll miss some references, but you can follow the stories fine. And that's what's happening. And I'm definitely picking up where the references that I'm missing are a lot of the time, even though I'm sure some of them are flying right over my head. When they say something like, nobody dies from a spear wound on a spaceship, they're clearly referencing something. There was a more obvious one, but I can't remember it. So I know there are references I'm missing, but I'm fine with that because the story is good. What I noticed was the intro, they have one of those Enterprise-style ships, the Star Trek ships, in a stream of rocks, and it gets pulled through the stream toward a black hole and then flies away from the black hole right at the end, which I realized after I was into the 2nd season of Lower Decks. It explains the show pretty well. Like I said, the stories aren't super compelling, but I don't think they're supposed to be. They're everyday situations. In space, there are magnetic or gravitational asteroid waves that the ship can get caught up in and go. And that's what happens in this show. The people, the crews, don't encounter crazy things very often, but there are things that are going to happen in the universe, and the characters get caught up in them and always manage to make it out of there alive. Just like this original 10-second, 7-second piece of animation right at the beginning of the intro of the show. And I really like that visual explanation of what the show is about. I'm assuming that's deliberate. But maybe this is how one becomes a Trekkie. You start putting meaning onto things. But as far as how crazy everybody part of the show is invested into the show, that must be deliberate, because that's exactly how all of their adventures happen. It's the just normal people who happen to live in this society on this ship. And the ship, being in space and encountering things, encounters normal things, and the crew has to figure out how to deal with normal things that seem catastrophic or revelatory or novel. It's an interesting show. I'll watch the entire animation for sure, and then I think by the end of that, and this was my plan, I'll be invested enough into the Star Trek universe to give maybe the Next Generation or whatever the other ones are another shot. I remember the movies being very boring, including The Wrath of Khan. I was a Star Wars kid, and I'm still a Star Wars kid, more than Star Trek. But at least Lower Decks is like getting me into the universe, which I want to be because there's so much stuff to watch, and I have so much time that I wouldn't mind watching it. Also, I came across a couple quotes from the writing from Picard in one of the episodes, and I was like, man, that's such a good quote. I'd love to see the story that ends up with him, saying that at the end, wrapping up the episode. Also, a nice guy online gave me a couple episode guides, and they say, yeah, the first and second seasons are mostly trash. There's like a lot of fluff in it, and there's apparently a really good explanation why the writing and the whole show gets better in the third season, which I'm interested in. I might follow the episode guide and not watch most of the first and second seasons if they seem too fluffy or inconsequential to me. But from that Picard quote, I am interested in seeing what happens when he starts being the Picard he's famous for, which apparently begins in season 3. Or really begins consistently. So, I'm getting into Star Trek. If you want to get into Star Trek, I can confirm Lower Decks is a pretty good way to get into it. Entertaining, like I said, short watch time, good characters, and the themes are presented very well. It's fun. I've also been playing video games more. Resident Evil 3, a lot of fun. I know I tried to play the original ones because I loved 4. I was obsessed with 4. Like 4, I don't know if I can still say it's my favorite, but if it's not, it's tied for favorite with one of the other. It's probably still my favorite. It's so much fun. I played through that game 10 times, 20 times. When I was a kid in high school and I got Resident Evil for the first time, I probably played through it like 10 or 20 times back then. And I've played it a couple times over the years. I played the remake they just made, I think. I can't even remember. Might have played the original one right before they made that remake. But now that they're remaking Resident Evil 3 and 2, and I believe 1 was just announced, I played the remake of Resident Evil 3, and it's super fun. I remember playing 2 and 3 and 1, and the controls and it was just so awkward to play. It was terrible. But I had a really good time playing through 3, and then I just went on to 2. And 2 is very exciting also, and Leon's back, my favorite character from 4. So I can see why these games were so exciting, but I couldn't enjoy the earlier games when I went back to play them because it's polygonal. It looks so bad. The controls are really rough, and you have to solve these puzzles. And I still have a problem with modern games where I have to solve a puzzle, but it won't let me do stuff in the real, like I can't reach under the bed with my arm in a video game because that's not how the video game is designed. So I kind of get frustrated with certain puzzles where I can't just check everything how I would in the real world and move around. And with Resident Evil, especially those early ones, you have to do precisely this and solve the puzzles according to the strictures of, the game industry 25 years ago or whatever. And that's pretty boring. But with 3 and 2, fun. I'm having a really good time playing them. I don't know why I'm so obsessed with Resident Evil, but I figured while I'm at it, I should check out the TV shows. I always liked the Mila Jovovich movies, and I didn't know they had made any Resident Evil TV shows, but they've made a couple recent ones. So I watched Infinity Darkness, Resident Evil Infinity Darkness, which is a computer animated show, and they make Leon into an idiot, like a jerk and pretty dumb, and he just says one-liners. I think maybe he's supposed to be the cool character. Is that the favorite character? I don't even know. I know nothing about the fan base of Resident Evil, only my personal experiences. So if Leon is the fan favorite, I could see why they keep giving him these one-liners in the first episode of Infinite Darkness, and they try to make him cool. But I feel like he was so good in 4 because he just did what needed to be done. And I'm playing 2 now, which stars Leon, and it's the same thing. He's just doing what needs to be done. He's ethical, and does what needs to be done. He fights monsters or whatever. So he's a good character because he's fairly stoic while trying to do the right thing, and action-packed. So I can see why Leon would become a fan favorite pretty easily. He's a classic action hero type with a bit more ethics, but realistic ethics, because there's freaky zombies and he's freaked out. But they really made him too stereotypically action hero-y in the first couple episodes. By the third episode, there must have been a fan response because his character changes to a more stoic but effective character. He doesn't talk as much. He doesn't say as many stupid things. And the show was good. It was funny enough to watch. Like, I liked the cutscenes in Resident Evil. But I'm also very glad it was only 4 episodes, just a little mini-series, because it definitely could have gone on for too long. But it didn't. It was a good, tight story. It was fine. It was fun to watch. I also started the live action. I've only seen the first episode so far, but I like where it's going. I was really surprised when they introduced the main characters and told us their names, because didn't expect them to be there. So they're obviously redoing the story of the origins and all this kind of stuff, but great actors, fun story. I'm interested in seeing where it's going. I didn't like the Mad Max vibe they did with the first town, but they got rid of that right away, which I'm guessing was deliberate story-wise. They're like, don't worry, we're not going to do this bullshit too much. Which was weird, because having a Mad Max style, homeless people in the future apocalypse, post-apocalyptic town isn't a staple of Resident Evil as far as I'm aware of. They don't have like enclaves in the movies I remember with Mila Jovovich, or I don't know. So I'm not sure why they did that stunt and then got rid of it. But I mostly liked the live action first episode, and I'll probably continue that today because I got free time. Oh, while I'm talking about Resident Evil real quick, video games, they are freaky. Resident Evil, especially 2, does make my heart pound and race when Tyrant shows up. I was really surprised because I was like, whoa. And I was like, oh, it got me. I got. So the games are still freaky and creepy and yeah, and well-designed game. I'm really glad I get to play it with more complete visuals and realistic visuals and controls. I'll play the original when they remake that one also. Oh, there's apparently a bunch of like fan HD remakes of the original, so maybe I'll just play one of those, see how that feels. It's a little weird playing Resident Evil and seeing all the credits be entirely Japanese people. That makes sense because it's a Japanese game by a Japanese company. The weird part is that they make it so specifically American, and I want to get into that. I want to get how they design these characters, because the story is always about special American agents, special agents who are American from America doing American things in America or in Europe. But it's a very American-made game. But the cast for every game until today, still 8, is all Japanese. So I'm curious how they are framing and understanding the American parts of the culture they do put in there, why they chose to make it set in America. Except I'm guessing that was marketing. They're like, America has the video game industry. I don't know. I'm really curious about looking into that, though, because I've been playing all the games recently. I played 7, 8, then 5, then 3, now 2. And it's always interesting seeing the credits and remembering that, oh yeah, this isn't even an American game. This is a fully Japanese game that they made the mouth animation so that they're speaking the English words, which they didn't do in the earlier games, I think. See, I gotta look into this. I don't know. I'm just throwing stuff out there. But it's really interesting seeing this very heavily Americanized game made entirely by people from another country. Although, I would guess at this point, like, the lore of Resident Evil is much stronger than whatever country you choose to set it in. I wonder if they have, like, a disconnect, the team, culturally. I think it's just because I love living in culture, so it's really interesting to think about how people live in other cultures, or create a world like a Resident Evil game or TV show like Infinite Darkness, and they have to live in this other culture that they're creating the story for that they're not a part of. But then, like, C.S. Lewis didn't live in Narnia, so yeah. Fiction. Fiction is blowing my mind. I think me realizing what fiction is a good place to stop this rambling. I'll talk to you on the next one. Thank you if you listened for whatever reason. It's fun talking, and I will speak to you soon.